Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Monday. Today we're talking about the mystical, the magical red crested gecko. You know, everyone likes a good patternless red crested gecko, and there are some cool things about them and some things you can look out for to find your very own patternless red crested gecko. And I thought today we'd talk a little bit more about them. Now, the patternless red crested gecko is like a staple. Everyone likes patternless reds. They're simple, they're clean, and they're cool. They're red. I mean, who wouldn't want a red gecko? But there are some variations within the red crested geckos and some things you can do to find a nicer, more red gecko. So I'm going to show you two pictures here. These are both my female breeders. You can see this girl here. She's red, right? But she's more of a red-orange, I guess you could say. Now, there are actual orange geckos too, orange crested geckos, but you can see this one's a little bit more orangey, right? But then you got girls that look like this who are more like actually red, I guess you could say. Now, either of these could be considered a patternless red animal. It's just that there are variations of the red, I guess you could say. There's some that are more saturated than others. Some are going to be more towards the orangey side, which I would say is more common. And then you're going to have these ones where they're actually like really deep red, and those are going to be harder to find. I mean, red crested geckos in general are always a good sell, so anytime you see an adult red animal, they're probably going to sell out pretty fast, especially if it's a ready to breed female. They're going to fly off the shelf. But on MorphMarket, there are quite a few patternless red hatchlings for sale, and I'm going to give you guys some tips on how you can choose a good patternless red animal for yourself in case you don't already own one. So now that we got out of the way what actually is a patternless red, I wanted to give you guys some tips on how you can spot babies that could be potentially red as adults. And here's the interesting thing about patternless reds. Let's say, for example, you bred two harlequins together that aren't red. They're just random harlequins, right? Well, you're going to probably get more harlequins, maybe some extremes, and there might be an oddball that pops out in there somewhere, right? And you can tell this right when they're born. When the baby hatches, you're like, oh, yep, that's going to be a harlequin, or oh, that's going to be an extreme, right? Well, when you breed two patternless red animals together, all your babies are going to come out and you're going to look at them and they're going to be like tan or brown. And you're going to be like, well, that didn't seem to work. Why are all my babies brown? You know, why aren't they red? Well, the interesting thing about patternless red animals and most red crested geckos in general, red harlequins, red extremes, anything like that, almost all red animals start out some shade of brown, tan, or maybe red. Very rarely you'll get one that's kind of got that reddish hue from the beginning, but for the most part they start out brown or tan. And this can make it difficult when you're breeding reds because you don't know which ones are going to be the nicest deep reds or which ones are going to stay kind of brown. So I want to give you some tips when looking for patternless reds or reds in general to make sure you're picking up one that has a high chance of turning red. So when you're looking for your patternless red animals, assuming that you're not breeding them, because if you're breeding your own reds, like if you breed two patternless reds together, chances are you're going to get mostly patternless reds back. So if you're picking out random reds, my advice to you is if you're looking for a baby, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. If you can wait till they're a juvenile or an adult, obviously it's going to be really easy because you're going to be like, oh, that one's really red. But if you're looking for babies, because I've noticed there's been quite a few listed up on MorphMarket lately that have been labeled as patternless reds, you know, that are in that 5 to 10 gram range where they're still kind of tan and brown. Here's my suggestion to you. If they do have lineage, I would definitely ask for that first. If the parents were both red, there's a high chance that your baby will be red. If one of the parents is red, there's still a pretty good chance that it'll turn out red. One thing to be on the lookout for, though, is geckos that are more like darker or more brown, I guess you could say. In my opinion, those have a less likely chance of turning into a bright red. When I've been breeding my reds and from purchasing other reds as babies, it seems the ones that are a little bit lighter, a little bit more tan, turn into the brighter reds. It's been about a 50-50 shot with the dark ones where they either turn like muddy brown or they just stay kind of dark and not red at all. So if you're buying a baby patternless red with no lineage, look for something that's a little bit lighter, a little bit more tan colored versus something that's a darker brown. That's my advice to you. It's kind of a crapshoot either way, especially when they're really little because it can go either way. but that's just something to keep in mind. Now, if you're breeding your own, breeding two reds together, especially patternless ones or phantom reds, phantom pins, you're pretty much going to get all reds back. At least that's been my experience. If you're doing it like one Harlequin and one red, it's a little bit different, but breeding two reds together, you're probably going to get more reds back. Now, I know we kind of touched on the different variations, the ones that are a little bit more red orangey or the ones that are a deeper red. But there's also some other things that can factor into that. If you get a red orange one, that's great. It's bright, it's beautiful. If you get a deep red one, that's beautiful too. But there are some unfortunate things when you're breeding reds that you can be on the lookout for. So it's been my experience that ones that hatch out darker, like more towards the shade of brown, have a less likely chance of turning out to be a really nice bright red. There's a chance they could turn out to be a deep red, but it's just been my experience that any of them that are pretty dark, I'll show you an example here, don't turn out to be very red in the end. Maybe that's just my luck, but that's just something to keep on the lookout for, especially when you're breeding or buying. If you were trying to decide, hey, I got 10 red babies from this year, 3 of them are pretty dark, 3 of them are, mid-tone, and the rest are pretty light. You might want to get rid of the dark ones because they might not be as bright red. And then the worst one of all is you get one that's, somewhere in the middle, kind of light, right? I'll show you a picture. And it turns out to be what I like to call like muddy red, where it's like kind of brown, kind of red, not really great at either. And, that's even worse because you have all your hopes are up, your hopes are high, and it turns out to be a muddy animal. And that happens too from time to time. And this can happen when you breed two animals that are kind of red, but not really together. If you breed two muddier reds, this can happen. You can just get more muddy reds, or like breeding a yellow animal and a red animal. This can happen too. Just kind of makes them look, a little dirty, I guess you could say. It's like partially brown, partially red. And then obviously you get what you're looking for is your nice, clean, crisp reds. I'll show you a baby that's going to be a nice red as an adult here too. It's just kind of hard to say. It's kind of unfortunate that the reds take a while before you can tell which ones are going to be nice, especially if you're trying to sell them. They usually start getting red around the 10-gram range. And you can kind of tell, hey, this one's going to be nice, this one's going to be muddy, this one's going to be brown. But these are just some tips I wanted to share with you today. I think red crested geckos are really interesting in that sense because it's kind of unlike any other sort of crested gecko morph in the fact that it's pretty hard to tell which ones are going to be nice when they're a baby. And before I go, I also wanted to share with you some wonderful breeding season news here. My red male Hellboy, who you may know as the, I want to say Chimera, is that how it's pronounced? The one that has the two base colors. I have a successful confirmed lock between him and one of my most successful proven breeder females. So I'm hoping that we're going to end up with some interesting looking babies here in a couple of months. She has not laid any eggs yet, but I will keep you updated on that. Also, my male Vector, my nicest non-lily white male, had a confirmed lock with one of the females I bred from King and Fall. So she's a very high pattern animal too, and he's obviously really great. He's probably the nicest gecko I own. And so those had a confirmed lock too. And then obviously if you follow me on Instagram, Diamond and Red Velvet, the very deep red gecko I showed at the beginning of this video, they also had a confirmed lock, and I have good eggs from them. So next year is going to be an amazing year, hopefully, for babies as far as reds and high whites and stuff go. And I just wanted to keep you guys in the loop on that. I'll let you know if I get good eggs from the other two pairs. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you found this helpful, please drop a like down below. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below on patternless red crested geckos, and I hope to see you guys in my next video.